Hello. Today's video, I'm going to be talking about a relatively topical issue and certainly a contentious one. Um, I always try to be candid in my videos and not politically correct, and that will very much apply with this. But at the same time, I don't actively seek to hurt or offend anyone. I just try to speak candidly. Um, I do feel that it's important though to discuss issues because so long as we have free speech online, it's important because, frankly, in the real world, some of these issues it is not so easy to talk about because we're now in such a politically correct environment that I do think some of these issues are becoming hard to discuss. The issue I want to speak about is the concept of being a transsexual, of changing from one gender to another. Um, I should say changing from one sex to another or attempting to, because there is a difference. I'll come to that in a minute. Firstly, if you do happen to be a trans man or a trans woman, there's a strong chance you won't like some of the things I'm saying. So I recommend just stop watching the video because believe it or not, I've got no intention of trying to hurt you. But I also believe what I believe, and that's the way it is. Obviously, I've got no first-hand experience, so I don't pretend to. Anyway, I'm going to break this into several parts. Firstly, the terminology. I think that is important. I think it is important to note that gender and sex are two different things. Sex is biology. That's something absolutely beyond people's control. Gender comes into issues of gender identity. Now, I fully agree and accept that there are many people who grew up feeling they should have been like boys that should have been in a girl's body, girls should have been in a boy's body. That's something I'm very tolerant of. I can't relate to it, but I'm very sympathetic to that. Must be quite a lonely um, must be quite a lonely experience to go through life feeling that you're in the wrong body. And feeling psychologically like you are male when you're biologically female, or feeling psychologically female when you're biologically male. Um, so I absolutely accept that as a reality. I don't think it's just a fleeting thing. Although, having said that, I have a big problem with so-called trans children. I think that is utterly absurd because simply because I don't believe children have the mental maturity to make their own decisions, even if they're convinced of it. If I was a parent, and my son or daughter was absolutely convinced that they wanted to have a sex change, I'd say, okay, when you're 18, you can decide yourself. But I think it's fundamentally wrong that parents give in to 5-year-olds. I've heard of that. I mean, it's some people say they're loving parents. I say that is just pandering to. I say that's being a pushover, frankly. Because the fact of the matter is that is such a profound decision. You know, I wanted to be Indiana Jones when I was 7 years old. That never transpired. And you know, I'm not trivializing childhood dreams, but that's what they are, childhood dreams. And fundamentally think it's just unacceptable that you have such a concept as trans children. I mean, my God, we're talking here about children. And this kind of relates to the overall point I'm trying to make or I want to make, in that people can't even discuss this today without being accused of being a hateful bigot. But I do think there is legitimate questions because we're going to get to a point where anything goes. Anything goes. You know, we're in such a politically correct, sensitive age that anyone who questions it in any way is a hateful bigot. And that's a pity because at some point we're going to get to a point, and I'm not saying this is comparison, but we will get to a point where pedophiles will demand rights. And they will say, that, oh, we've been discriminated against for years. This is, we should be treated like everyone else. Now, I'm not saying that other situations are the same. Obviously, they're not, because a free thinking adult who does what they want with his or her body is obviously not the same as an adult preying on children. But my point is that if we take everything that is not traditionally, conventionally acceptable and say it's okay without question, then we are going to go down that path. It's just a fact. Um, and I don't see myself as particularly socially conservative. For example, I have no problem whatsoever with people having the operation, the hormone treatment, and so on. It's entirely their own business. It's not my business. But what I do take issue with is the political correctness around it. It's sort of like forced acceptance. Um, Now, I totally understand where we have, for example, legislation against discrimination, or, well, actually, that in itself is a complex area, and I'm going to come into that because I do think there are important questions to be raised. But for example, would be totally against hate crimes, and there has been a number of hate crimes against trans people. There's a well-publicized Brandon Tina case that was awful. No one should have to go through something like that. So I totally recognize that that is, I would absolutely support legislation to protect trans people from hate crime. No one should have to go through violence or intimidation because of who they are. I get that. But I mentioned the discrimination thing. Now, this is actually quite complex. There was a recent case where a trans woman was sent to an all-male jail because the law recognized her as a he. Now, the problem there is if they were sent to an all-women's prison, it's my understanding that this was the the process hadn't been 100% through, so there was still male biology there, and actually I think there always will be. But the point is, let's say he was sent to an all-women's prison, then the women complain that they've got a guy amongst them. Now I understand the argument that as a woman, as someone who identifies as a woman, she would be vulnerable in a male prison population. But here's the thing: her crime was assault. So I take quite a short-sighted view of that. This is no shrinking violet. And it seems to me that, well, in that case, I can't talk about every case, but in that case, she was a tough bloke when it suited her, and she's a fragile woman when it suited her. So I've little sympathy there. Um, because the fact of the matter is, if she's sent to an all-women's prison, the women would feel uncomfortable. And this is an area I want to talk about regarding discrimination. There's been a move by a number of universities and one or two public buildings to have gender neutral toilets. Again, this is something I don't feel so comfortable with. Why? Because to me, that is bending or making the majority compel to the needs of a very small minority. There's an extremely small number of people who've actually went through the full process. So to me, this is ridiculous. If you identify as a woman, use a woman's toilets. If you identify as a man, use a man's toilets. Gender neutral toilets are ridiculous. Why? Because then you get women feeling uncomfortable with men using the same facilities, men feeling uncomfortable with women using the same facilities. You know, if if trans people want to be treated with equality, then they have to stop acting like charity cases. I'm sorry to be blunt, but that is the way it is. If if you treat yourself as a protected species, then you will be treated as different. So trans people want to be treated in a normal way, then I think these sort of approaches are just totally counterproductive. So that's where there are grey areas regarding discrimination legislation. Because how do you define what is discrimination versus what is protecting others? I mean, if, for example, a trans woman, i.e., man to woman, has not been 100% through their process, I don't know all the details of that, but let's say they're 50%, 70% through the process, and they still have elements. Say, for example, they have got the breasts, but they still have a penis. Now, you know, if someone in that in that level of the process is using women's facilities, and women see the penis, I would imagine that would make it very uncomfortable. I think these are very legitimate questions. Again, though, even talking about these things, I would, brand, not sure what the term is, transphobe. Um, I just feel uneasy with the fact that it's just a case of, oh, accept it without question, without question. Now, there's another area I want to discuss, and that is the issue of um, dishonesty. Now, like I said, there has been examples of hate crime against trans people, so I can understand why, in many cases, they would be reluctant to fully reveal their original identity or, the fact that they may be halfway through a process. But here's the thing: if a trans woman, that is man to woman, um, seduces a man, a straight man, and let's say they're pretty convincing, they've got all the makeup on, they are convincing, they go to sleep, that man then finds out the person he has been sleeping with has a penis. This is a straight man. Now, should that not be classed as rape? Is that surely no better than a man spiking a woman to have sex with her? I think it is. I think it is deceptive. And I have to say, if I'm ever in that situation, I would see red. No, I wouldn't go to the extent of what that US Marine went to in the Philippines of murdering someone in cold blood, which I don't condone. I think I made a video about that at the time. It was wrong. But deception is deception. Whatever the motivation is, deception is deception. It's a bit like if a gay man marries a woman, then tells her later on he is gay. Um, Deception is deception, whatever the motivation is, and deception hurts people. It's just, I think there's no excuse for it. So if you are going to live, if you want to be a trans person, then you better be damn sure that the other person is accepting of that fact. And again, this is a very grey area because presumably trans women are not lesbians. They want to be attracted to men. But I cannot conceive anyone other than trans people being accepting that situation. I mean, again, this is none of my business. If there were trans people who did accept that, or sorry, if there was non-trans people who did accept being with a trans person, then okay. Um, but I find that hard to believe. I cannot imagine that a straight man, especially, heterosexual women may be a little bit more flexible, but I imagine that a heterosexual man will never, ever want to be with anyone other than a heterosexual woman, um, or a woman even. But that is just the laws of attraction. That's the way it is. I cannot imagine, but speaking personally, speaking candidly, I could never sleep with a trans woman. I just couldn't do it. I don't care if she had no penis, if she had breasts, if she was good looking. I know for a fact it would make me uncomfortable, no matter what. And that's, again, I'm not attempting to hurt anyone, but I'm just being candid about the way I think a lot of people feel about this. And I've seen a chart actually showing how many now gender formats there are: gender neutral, gender fluid, trans, and it goes on and on, maybe 20 different things now. And it makes you think. I have noticed actually that whilst a few years ago the real cause celebre of the left was gay rights, that's sort of becoming more accepted now, as it should be. Um, but the sort of political correctness that was so often around gay rights, that is, ultra sensitivity, is now coming around the trans issue. And it just pisses me off that anyone who questions this in any way is branded a hateful transphobe. We are going to get to a point, frankly, where paedophiles will be able to say the same thing. And again, I'm not saying that there's a moral equivalent between paedophiles and trans people, because there isn't. Trans people don't hurt others in the same way. But right, here's the thing about moral question. No, I'm not particularly religious, so for me, it's not so much an issue of, oh, you're messing around with what God made. It's not so much that. But I do take issue with the idea you can have operations on your genitals, you can mess around with that, you can do everything, and then you demand that people accept you as a woman or a man. I I think out of politeness, out of courtesy, I would use the nouns, the pronouns that he or she wants me to use, but you cannot dictate to people that you are this just because you say you are. I mean, if a mental health patient says that they believe they're Queen Victoria, should people pander to that? I honestly do think that there hasn't been enough studies conducted into the mental health of people who are going through this operation. That's my candid view. I don't think there has been enough studies conducted into it. And it may well be that we are pandering to people's childhood dreams, to what they want. I'd like to see studies, or I'd like to see how many cases there's been of who people who went through the transformation and then haven't felt happy. I had a friend actually who considered this. He'd always grown up feeling like a girl. He never went through with it, and not so long ago, he's a gay man. Not so long ago, he told me that he was pleased he never went through it because now he's happy with who he is. He's feminine. He's much more. His personality is much more like a feminine woman than in any way masculine. But he has told me that he is happy he didn't go through with the process because he suffers from anxiety, and that would have, in his view, led to even more of that. Anyway, I'm going to close with a few points here. If people watching this video want to look at me as a hateful bigot, then there's nothing to do about that. I really don't hate trans people, but I do hate the political correctness around it. And another few points. I think it's up to people to do absolutely what they want with their own bodies. If someone wants to have an operation, they can afford it, and they're fully prepared for the consequences. All best to them. I don't think it's for anyone else to say that they can't do that. Let me make that point crystal clear. But they cannot then dictate to society, you have to accept this. They can reasonably expect not to be treated with um, violence or hate. That's a basic human right. But, dictating to society that this is the definition of male and female, I think is wrong. It's just, it's nonsensical to me. It's like saying a child is an adult. To me, male is male, female is female. Shoot me down. That's what I believe. Um, and it's my concern with this is that every taboo issue is going to become politically correct so that anything goes. I do believe we'll get to that point, and that's problematic because it will get into areas where others are affected. Now, in most cases, trans people are harmless, don't hurt others. But like I mentioned, there are cases where, for example, men have been deceived. This is not a trivial matter, and it's not something that should be taken lightly. People might think, "Oh, straight men whinging." No, it's deception, and as far as I'm concerned, it's just as bad as a man spiking a woman's string. It's no different. So if you're a trans person, all best to you, but you've no right to deceive people. Final point, I'm not talking from personal experience directly. I have had people who I suspect trans people come on to me. I never let it go further, obviously, but it made me uncomfortable. And in those cases, I had to get quite, I didn't get violent, but I had to be quite assertive and quite hard because in in the case that I'm thinking of, I don't want to talk in detail about it because it was not a particularly pleasant experience. It's not something I want to really publicize here. but I basically told the person to fuck off because they wouldn't take no for an answer. So that's it really. Um, Let me know your thoughts. If you are a trans person, well, I imagine you won't like anything I said, but I'm sorry. Um, can you honestly tell me you are absolutely 100% okay with everything yourselves? Are you? Because I suspect most people, if they're being honest, if they say they're 100% tolerant of everything, they're lying. Every person, in my opinion, has at least one issue they're just not quite comfortable with. And for me, I just have an issue with this idea that you can have surgery, you can chop off your penis, and then you are a woman. And actually, I support Jermaine Greer's point that being a woman is a lot more than having surgery. It is about experience. And the same applies to men. In my opinion, only men who are biologically men can really know what it is like to be a man. And, the other thing about changing public toilets, so I think that's ridiculous. Because for one thing, it is a very, very, very small number of people. Of course, they should never be in a situation where they face hate crime. I've made that abundantly clear. But anyway, I'm just going to be repeating myself. Let me know your thoughts. Um, I'll leave the comments open. I am expecting a few angry messages, but so be it. Um, if you're going to demand that people accept you for what you are, you have to accept that there are a lot of people that simply find it hard to accept that calling yourself male when you're biologically female, or vice versa, is hard to understand.